Our minds work in entropy. Randomness and disorder are commonplace in our thoughts as we try to make sense of the world around us. Reflection brings order to that chaos, and ordering those thoughts to share with others cements our learning. Pondering through our life's journey as we go through it allows us to frame a perspective, a lens through which we see situations, and develop a mindset to face different circumstances. Today, I have two objectives. Encourage you to capture your reflections in a structured way to share with others, and share some perspectives that have resulted from my own contemplations. No, I am not a professional philosopher or psychologist. I'm an ordinary individual who's been extraordinarily blessed, like most people in this room, at the American International School in Guangzhou, China. I'm a father of a 22-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son, a husband of 32 years and counting, a manager of 30 years at a leading international company who has lived in 7 geographies in 3 continents. And yes, I am an amateur philosopher, psychologist, theologian, who likes to noodle through my mental entropy to generate perspectives. Now, ordering chaos takes effort, and that applies to our room as it does to our mind. Now, as with any organizing endeavor, once we get through it, it's fulfilling and it makes us more effective. So let me practice what I preach and share some perspectives that have resulted from my own contemplations, intended to power growth. I will focus on the concept of balance. Balance is important to guide us through life since extremes are usually hazardous. As I heard articulated in the Search Ministries audiobook, the opposite of a vice is not a virtue, but another vice, and the virtue stands in the balance. For example, cowardice is a flaw, and at the other extreme is another flaw, temerity. And courage, conscious of risks, is a balanced virtue. Similarly, stinginess is a vice, and the other extreme is equally unhealthy, wastefulness. And mindful generosity is the balance. I intend to call out on key areas to balance without intending to be exhaustive and share some thoughts on them. Examples include care versus accountability, work versus family, contentment versus ambition, doing versus worrying, today versus tomorrow, objective versus purpose, material versus spiritual, excellence versus obsession, confidence versus humility, discipline versus passion. In the time that I have, I will only focus on the first few. For fuller coverage, you will have to wait for my book, which is due out when my son graduates from high school in 2028. So let's start with care versus accountability, as that applies to any relationship, whether as a parent, as a manager, or as a peer. As a parent, these could be renamed love versus discipline. If we only show love to a child and they never have consequence for their mistakes, we end up spoiling them. Conversely, accountability or discipline without care becomes burdensome and drains the relationship. A balance of both results in mutual respect. Now, applying such balance requires that we be willing to exhort a friend, lovingly confront a spouse, as dangerous as that may seem, and recognize that decisions have consequences. It takes willingness to be unpopular and sometimes engaging in difficult conversations. This is amongst the most important parenting advice I give to young couples or leadership advice to new managers. Keep a warm heart but a cool head. Let me turn to work versus family. Work-life balance is often quoted as a crucial area for career-oriented individuals to manage. I believe that phrase can be misused. It implies that working or living are mutually exclusive, that while you're working, somehow your life is being shortchanged. It ignores the fact that while working, we forge our closest relationships, and we can impact people's lives as much as we can impact the bottom line. It assumes that work is a necessary evil, a drudgery that we need to plod through until we clock out and can live again. It ignores the fact that work is one of our biggest blessings and sources of fulfillment. Now, all of that sounds as a perfect excuse to become a workaholic and not draw boundaries. Again, the key is to balance. I believe we should work as hard as we need to accomplish the objectives that our enterprise has. And there is true tension between using our finite time laboring and spending it with family and friends. When that tension peaks, the decisions should be straightforward, though not necessarily easy. Paraphrasing Brian Dyson, the former CEO of Coca-Cola, from the multiple balls we need to juggle in life, friends, family, spirit, health, work, only the latter is made of rubber that if dropped can bounce. The rest are made of glass, and they need to be guarded to avoid breaking. This is a good leeway to my third example, contentment versus ambition. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Content makes poor men rich. Discontent makes rich men poor." Now, a call for contentment is not a call for complacency. Being ambitious to improve oneself, our family, our communities, is honorable with the adequate perspective. The Apostle Paul warns us against selfish ambition. Not decrying ambition itself, but the selfish motivation that it often drives it. The ability to be content and ambitious at the same time. It's a sign of noble motivation, and it allows us to experience joy as we go through life, no matter in which rung of the ladder of success we stand as we climb it. Now let's talk about doing versus worrying. A friend of mine, when faced with a difficult situation, would usually say, "Yo no me preocupo, yo me ocupo," which translates into, "I don't preoccupy myself, I occupy myself." And it sounds better in Spanish, but the message is what matters. Do not worry, but do. In the 2015 Cold War movie, Bridge of Spies, lawyer James Donovan, played by Tom Hanks, would repeatedly ask accused Soviet spy Rudolf Abel, why didn't he seem concerned with his predicament? To which Abel would dryly reply, "Would it help?" Our human condition is wired to worry. Fear of an unknown outcome leads us to our preoccupation, even if we have zero influence on that outcome. The best antidote to worrying is doing. And if there's little that can be done, we should ask ourselves Abel's question, would it help to worry? And no answer may qualm our concerns a bit. And that reminds me of another quote, this one from French poet Victor Hugo, who said, "When you have accomplished your daily task, go to sleep in peace. God is awake." What about today versus tomorrow? Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called present, somebody said. We can all think of long-term planners that busily plan for their future to be ready every day, such that the present escapes them. On the other side, we have those who seize the moment every moment, in that the journey becomes the destination. And critical events in life are not planned for. I recall once listening to a story that goes something like this. There was a young man who spent his time at the beach sleeping on hammocks and singing serenades. A middle-aged man comes and challenges him to do something with his life. "What do you mean?" the young man says. well, you should study hard and get a college degree. And then the young man asked, well, then you can get a job, very productive job, and well remunerated. And then another question came, well, then you can be promoted to more responsibility and a better paying job. And then, well, eventually you can retire with a lot of savings. And then the young man pressed, well, when you retire, you can go to the beach, you can sleep in hammocks, and you can sing serenades. Just aside, whilst I do advocate to go to college, get a degree, and save for retirement, there is some wisdom to this story in that we frequently put off what we can enjoy in life for a promised better tomorrow. As a well-known adage states, people often invest their health accumulating wealth only later to use the wealth to try to recover their health. As with the other dimensions, the benefit is in the balance. Being mindful and prepared for life's critical events, planned or unplanned, while being intentional about today's present is the aim. Taking periodic retreats from our day-to-day churn, much like a submarine raises its periscope to scan the horizon to see how we're doing against long-term goals, that's advisable. Respecting routine that allows us to live today is the counterweight. Something as simple as recounting your day and its learnings with your family at dinner, or being reflecting with thankfulness about your day before going to bed. That helps. I'll cover the next two as a combo, objective versus purpose, material versus spiritual, together. The English lawyer turned vicar and founder of Alpha, Nicky Gumbel, said, having more to live with is no substitute for having more to live for. It is advisable to have objectives in life, but no matter how many of those are met, it would be elusive to have fulfillment unless we have a purpose. Unless we know what makes us tick, what is it that we do and why we do it. Now, a purpose is generally bigger than ourselves, and it usually involves others. Now, with a purpose in mind, then we can calibrate and refine our objectives as we go through life. Now, as it pertains to the second part of the combo, for many, including me, a purpose has a spiritual component. And that provides an overarching perspective on life and how we view things. And whilst material possessions are of tremendous value, tremendous use, they largely become tools. And we end up valuing experiences over things. The last few I will cover only briefly. Excellence versus obsession. There is a fine line between pursuing excellence and obsessing with perfection that robs the joy of your endeavors. We should not cross that line. A kid that enjoys playing an instrument, that loves playing an instrument, can soon be so fixated on it that it becomes a grind with no fun. The same can happen with any trade or activity. Confidence versus humility. Build confidence by building competence, but stay humble. The British writer and theologian C.S. Lewis says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And finally, discipline versus passion. Seek to bring passion into every pursuit, but be mindful that you require discipline for those days you're not passionate about your task. An example is playing a sport. You may be passionate for playing it, but you also need the discipline to train for it. So there you have some reflections that hopefully make you reflect too as you go through your mental entropy. But the more important message is I want to encourage you to capture your thoughts to share with others. If you're a student, capture it for your younger sibling or for your older self. I guarantee you'll enjoy seeing your current views in the future. If you're an adult, your friends, family, and the next generation can learn from your journey. I tell you from personal experience. My father was a thinker, was a reader, but not a writer. And so at the end, he took his musings with him when he passed. What a wasted opportunity. Had I had a window into his mind, it would have made my trek easier. Every person has a story to tell, even if it appears unremarkable on the surface, because we all gather from our own learnings, from our own growth as we go through life. I can assure you that your story is a worthwhile one and a remarkable one. You know, self-publishing is quite easy these days. So who knows? I hope to see you in Amazon soon. Thank you.